Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another interview on Galaxy Comicon Live in February 2021. We're going to talk to a man now who went from his workshop to a galaxy far, far away. Thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us today. Mr. Lee Towersey, how are you doing today, Lee?
Hi, Steve. I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, mate. Thank you very much indeed. As I say, thank you ever so much for spending the time. I'll just sort of introduce a little bit about yourself, and then you can maybe tell us a bit more about yourself. Lee is the chairman of the UK R2-D2 Builders Club. Lee, why don't you tell us who your current employer is, if that's all right?
Well, the actual employer goes by the name of Neil Scanlon, and he works for the Creatures Department. And currently we work on a few productions, including a Star Wars production. Now,
the Creatures Department of where exactly?
Well, at the moment we're based at Pinewood Studios.
Okay.
So working for Lucasfilm at Pinewood Studios on a Star Wars production, yeah.
So I think Lucasfilm was the name I was sort of searching for there. That's fantastic. So Lee, your name has been in the credits of a number of Star Wars films. In fact, how many films has your name now been in the credits for?
5. Yeah, five Star Wars. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So Lee, tell us a little bit about your background. I understand you sort of came from a Lego building kind of radio control-y sort of background, and then sort of progressed on from there. Just tell us a little bit about your sort of early days in the building career, shall we say? Yeah,
so growing up, my mum and dad always encouraged me to maybe look for a job building things, because I was always building things as a kid, you know, whether it be Meccano, Lego or whatever, you know, if there's a new building kit out, I was always eager to get it. I was always building things. As I got older, my builds got more expensive with remote control cars and boats, planes and so on, which then led to droid building. So as a hobby, I was a droid builder. Got spotted, thankfully, by some guys from Lucasfilm, including Kathleen Kennedy. And she asked myself and Oliver Steeples to come on board for the relaunch of Star Wars when Disney took over Lucasfilm. And yeah, Oliver and myself ended up at Pinewood working on The Force Awakens back in 2013 now.
I mean, it's an incredible, almost fairy tale story, you could say. From what I understand, Oliver was at a Comic-Con in Germany with his R2 and sort of quite cheeky. Well, tell us how Oliver approached Kathleen.
Yeah, there's a few UK builders out there, actually, and obviously with the Europeans as well. And I couldn't make it, unfortunately. I can't remember what I was doing. But yeah, they just decided to, I think the news had recently been announced, or maybe at that Comic-Con, at Celebration, the news had been announced that there was going to be new Star Wars films. So it was fresh news anyway. So Oliver cheekily went up to, I believe it was Kathleen Kennedy herself, or her PA at the time, and just said, well, look, you know, surely if you need droids building, we're the guys. So whether it be consultancy or to hire the droids, or what ultimately turned out to be build the droids. So yeah, Oliver just left it with them. And I think it was 3 months later, the production team for Force Awakens were around Oliver's house, checking him out, seeing if he was for real here in the UK. And that led ultimately to being invited to Pinewood Studios for a chat. And Oliver and I went along. Oliver kindly invited me along because Oliver and I had worked together in TV adverts and various promotional events here in the UK with our R2s. And yeah, I just went along for a bit of moral support. And after 2 or 3 meetings we had, one of the meetings ended up with the words, "You've got the job." And we didn't really know we were going for a job, to be honest with you. So that was quite a pleasant surprise, and even more of a blag to pretend that we actually, you know, knew we were going for a job. And then we had to wait patiently for our start date.
So at that point, I assume you're sort of on an NDA, for want of a better description. So how long was it after you were told you got the job before the news actually broke? Did the news break with the picture that J.J. Abrams posted on Twitter with yourself and Oliver and Kathleen in the background?
That's correct, yeah. I'm not exactly sure when that broke, that picture, but we had been at Pinewood Studios for at least a month, maybe longer, before that picture broke. We were well into pre-production then. And yeah, I was under NDA, so I told my wife and my mum and dad They're the only people I told. I didn't tell my two sons because they were at school at the time. They were a lot younger than they are now. And I just do the playground talk, that would come. My dad's working on Star Wars, I just couldn't afford for that to happen. And NDAs are pretty tough, if you really do read them all, if you breach of NDA, you are in trouble, or potentially you could be in trouble. So I didn't want to lose my job as quickly as I got it. So I kept quiet. And yeah, then the photo broke that JJ posted on Twitter. And then I could tell my boys what Dad really was doing. I'd lied to them for a few months because I used to work from home, so running my own business, and suddenly I wasn't at home anymore. So I made up a lie. I made up a pretend job saying I was working in IT. And I could then tell them the truth.
It must have been an awful relief for you as well as a very proud moment, I expect. How did your boys take it? How did they take the news that their dad was working on a new Star Wars film?
Yeah, I can remember them seeing the tweet as I was yesterday, because being young, they were into Twitter and so on, and for their dad to appear on Twitter with JJ Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy, that was awesome as it is. They're big Star Wars fans anyway. And it was cool that their dad was on an announcement on Twitter. That was the cool thing. But then, it was just Dad going to work still. So nothing really changed at home. And so I started to speak to some of their friends. And sure enough, they then had been talking to their friends about it, playground talk. And, it was a nice way to find that obviously they were dead chuffed. They were really proud of what I'd achieved. And thankfully that's continued as well with their support and, their interest in what I'm doing.
Oh, that's brilliant news. I think it's very important that family is sort of supportive and that, there is that element of pride around both, you towards your sons and your sons towards yourself. I think that's really important. Talking of sort of support and things, I know that the R2 Builders Club in the UK is heavily involved in charity work. And in fact, last year, as a lot of the people watching this probably know, I'm actually a member of the club myself. I know that we raised an awful lot of money for CALM, which is the campaign against living miserably. Can you just tell us a little about our, the charity work within the club, and perhaps mention R2KT as well? Yeah,
so each year we always have a chosen charity. We supported NAS for quite a while, the National Autistic Society. And around the COVID times, we thought that maybe some mental awareness charity would be more suitable. So we decided to change from NAS to CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably. And also, sadly, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, we lost a colleague in the Creatures Department that was very close to our hearts. He really was the life and soul of the party. He was always, if you're on set and he's on set with you, you always knew you'd be all right, because he was a jack of all trades. He'd always muck in. He'd be the first one on set and the last one to leave. He'd make sure, you're all set up to the start of the day. And he'd make sure you've cleared away, and he'd help you pack away at the end of every day. And he was a legend, he is a legend, should I say. And he was a legend at the time. We all loved him to bits. And he worked on some amazing productions, not just Star Wars, but he worked on the Harry Potters as well. His name's Steve Wright. So I became more aware of mental illness then, because we literally packed away for the Rise of Skywalker and shut the whole workshop down. And literally our last day on Star Wars, what I thought was our last day on Star Wars, was with Steve and another guy and a few of the ladies that were helping pack away the Creatures Department. And then sadly, 3 or 4 days later, he ended his life. So it's such a shock having seen him, and I'll see you, Steve, see you on the next one. And so it brought it home to me. I'm very fortunate. I haven't suffered from any mental illness myself, but I know a few people that have had. So it was a really important thing to support. And then the other charity element, we've got R2KT, which is a worldwide astromech. It was built in America at first for Albin's daughter, who sadly had cancer and passed away. And her dying wish was to have a pink astromech. So the US R2 Builders Club together, they built a pink astromech, and it sat in the corner of her room, in a hospital room. So that was quite a poignant thing for the club to do. That was a phenomenal thing for them to do. And it actually came over to the UK, and Oliver and I looked after it, and it was in the background of Force Awakens. That then went back to the US, but then Albin Johnson has kindly given permission for various clubs around the world to build their own version of R2-Katie for whatever charity we choose to raise money for. So the UK have built an R2-Katie now as well. So it's just come to an end. The build has. Oliver's finished the build, I believe. And when we're back out there at events, I look forward to, you know, taking it out. Whoever's there operating Katie, it'll be great to show that, share the story, make people aware of different charities, and hopefully raise some money.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic work the club's done, and it has raised a fantastic amount of money as well over the years. I'm very aware of that. Now, let's sort of get back to films and things. So you've worked, as you said, on 5 different films set in the Star Wars universe. What's been your favourite film to work on, or do you have like a favourite director at all?
Okay, so favourite film to work on was probably The Force Awakens, because Star Wars was back. And this is just from experience working on the film. This is not me rating the films at all or anything, you know, in any particular order, but as an experience, definitely The Force Awakens, because, you know, the way we got there, it was a long job. I think I was working on it for about 18 months, and just the whole experience. And actually, I think the film turned out all right. I thought it was good. And personally, I always was fortunate enough to work directly with the directors, so I got to know the directors. But if I've got to pick one, it's going to have to be JJ, because he came back the second time. I feel that maybe he was part of the decision on getting Oliver and myself in as well. And I've been over to Bad Robots as well in LA, and have worked at JJ Studios. He's been kind enough to open the studios up to me and the family to have a tour around his studios. And yeah, he's just a top guy. And yeah, just he's charming.
Excellent stuff. So last year, as you may know, one of the special guests at Galaxy Comicon was Jimmy V, who is a well-known actor, and he actually had a test fitting for the Force Awakens droid, because from what I understand, JJ wanted to retain that human element of droids, and with Kenny Baker obviously sadly passing away, he felt it was important to sort of continue that tradition, I understand. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I understand he wasn't available, but then later on he came back for the next film. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So yeah, that's another good thing about JJ. You know, he totally got Star Wars, to be fair, as the other directors have, but JJ was insistent on keeping things as original as possible, but advancing, you know, with practical effects as best we could in the workshop, with improved motors and things like that. And obviously the thing that the guys achieved with BB-8. But going back to the two-legged R2, yeah, he was keen to have a performer inside R2-D2. Unfortunately, Kenny Baker wasn't well enough. He wasn't fit enough to be able to climb into R2. He would have had Kenny Baker back if he could, I'm sure. And we auditioned a number of people for R2-D2. Oliver and myself were left to our own devices really to do that. And we just had a wooden framework that we knocked up with a clear dome on top, all to the measurements of two-legged R2. So then we could, and it's quite lightweight, so then we could get any small person inside, and because we could see through the framework and we could see the clear dome, we could see the fit. So we had a few people that were a little bit too tall, so that, you know, they were really trying to get themselves even smaller to get inside the droid to get the job. But unfortunately, that wasn't going to work, because as soon as you start moving, we soon established that their head does come up, and then they start banging the dome, and A, it'll be uncomfortable, and B, you know, it's a bit of a giveaway that the dome's moving because their head's knocking about inside. So yeah, it ended up being Jimmy V being the chosen one, and he's strong. He was the perfect size for R2-D2. And when it came to filming, we weren't sure when R2-D2 was going to be shot on. We didn't have specific dates at this point. But when it came to filming, unfortunately, Jimmy V was working on Pan. And I'm not exactly sure how the contracts worked, but you are usually contracted from one film to another. So I believe that Pan would allow him to go to work on The Force Awakens. We were a bit sketchy on dates, so it was very hard for us to commit and for them to release him So in the end, as a backup, we had pneumatic feet in two-legged R2-D2, just operating off a joystick, going left to right, and the pneumatics on the feet just wobbled R2 from left to right. And that's what we did at the end, unfortunately. I think we tried to get Jimmy V in. We only shot 2 days, one on the interior of the Rebel base, which was shot at Primer Studios, and then at Greenham Common, we shot a scene as well, two-legged R2, which interestingly, it wasn't seen in the film, the shot we did, but it was used as a composite. So right at the end of the film, you see when they go to Skellig to go and find Luke, Atch 2, as it was called in the film, you see R2 by the Falcon wobbling from side to side. And it's CG because R2 didn't go to Skellig to shoot that scene, but they lifted the shot that we did at Greenham Common, two-legged R2, and composited it in to that shot at Atch 2. Oh. So both pneumatics, not Jimmy V because he couldn't make it, but then yes, we did get him in for The Last Jedi because he was available. So we used him in The Last Jedi.
So from what I understand in The Last Jedi, you were controlling the droid on set when R2 has his reunion with Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, of course. So you drove the R2 across, and I think we can see a photograph of you on set now. So when you had the droid in place, you then changed it into the version with Jimmy V. Is that right? And then he sort of did the head turn stuff, or did you control that?
Right. So yeah, we usually work together. The director usually asks me what I think would look best, and because we did discuss this, and obviously R2 to move across the Falcon first, they were keen to have that, so that was a no-brainer. That was going to be three-legged R2, and we used the all-terrain version of R2D2 because it's got a grill, it's got a grate on the floor. Yeah. So the hero R2 wouldn't really have worked. So we used the all-terrain R2 for that, which I drove. Then we did a switcheroo, and we got the two-legged version in because it was better for the eye line for Mark Hamill. Because with R2 leaning back, it was, it didn't look as though R2 was looking at him. So we felt that the two-legged version would be better. And yes, Jimmy V was in R2 then, and I was remote control operating the dome because Jimmy had to perform some movement, or he was required to. I can't remember if you see much movement in the actual body, but Jimmy V does all the movement of R2 from inside, and then I did the dome with the remote control just for eye line. Kenny used to work it himself, but we just felt, gave me something to do as well. So Jimmy and I could work together then. And I just did the eye line because he did do quite a turn to do the projector image of the old Leia message as well. So yeah, so I did the dome and Jimmy was inside doing the movement.
I wish I could make you understand, but I'm not coming back. Nothing can make me change my mind.
Years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request to you.
That was a cheap move.
But my ship has fallen under attack, and I made my mission to bring you to Oberon space.
So when you're doing a shot like that, how do you work out your sort of eye line so you know where R2's dome should be pointing to sort of coincide with where Mark Hamill is looking?
So, good question. So I was looking forward to your questions. I've got to say, Steve, you've been an experienced R2 person and puppeteer and stuff. I was hoping for some different questions. So this is your first new question for me. This is and that's a good one. So what I do, I actually use the panels on the dome and the body. So we line the shot up first, and they tell me where the eye line needs to be when it's on Mark Hamill, for example. And then when we turn the dome and they know where it wants to land for the projection, we work that out first so that they let me know, right, that's your A point, that's your B. So your A and your B. And then what I usually do is I find a dome panel or detail on the dome that lines up with something else on the body. So then I've got a start point and an end point. Sometimes you can mark the dome, but if you have like tape on the dome or something like that for a mark, so you wait for the tape to come around, the tape usually reveals itself, so that gets seen on camera. So yeah, what I normally do is just wait for the holo projector to come around and hit a mark or something like that. I just do a visual and then ingrain it in the brain and try and hit the mark every time.
So, Lee, with the recent surge in production from Disney following on from the success of The Mandalorian, which obviously has been a complete smash hit, what are your thoughts on the ramping up of production? I mean, Disney have announced a huge tranche of new productions and things.
Well, the best way I see it is I'm going to be busy, hopefully. Yeah, it's exciting. And I guess people are thinking, is there going to be too much Star Wars? I think because there's so many demographics now that they've got a cartoon, they've got a manga type Star Wars coming out, I believe one of them is. We've got TV, we've got the film, the Rebel pilot one, that is a one-off film, I believe, not a TV series. We've got Andor, of course. We've got Obi-Wan. I think it's great. I think it's a good time for Star Wars fans, and you don't have to watch it all. It's not all going to be for everyone. There's some stuff going to be for kids. There's some R-rated stuff that is probably going to be more suited for adults to see. Mandalorian was stunning. I think the TV series are a great idea. And when we get back to cinema, let's have the occasional film as well. Why not? And as you're aware, Mandalorian's been shot in the US, and we're still doing productions over here as well. So there's a spread of work between, around the world. And I think it's a good thing. But I think it's great.
Excellent. So you mentioned at the start of this interview that you're currently working for the Creature Workshop. I think that's the correct terminology. What's the atmosphere like for someone who hasn't who shall we say is a latecomer into the industry? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way whatsoever, but it's an industry you've sort of come into fairly recently, in recent sort of years. Do you find there's a lot of pressure on yourself to deliver, or is the atmosphere a little bit more, should we say, sort of relaxed and a bit more friendly?
It's an interesting path because I was 43 when my career changed and I got into the film industry. So it's quite a late career change, really. And I was quite happy skipping along doing what I was doing previously. But when I went along, Oliver and I were in a fortunate position that we knew R2 inside out. And we saw questions being asked around the workshop, which they didn't know that Oliver and I could answer. So, for example, the interrogation droids, they were looking at having a replica of the original interrogation droid, which is an R2-D2 dome. And before Oliver and I started, they were trying to replicate that. So we went up and there was all pictures up on the wall, and we were like, you do realise that's an R2 dome in that, don't you? And they were like, oh my God, of course. Because they could see that you could see the shut lines on it and so on. So that set us off on a good footing, really. So we went in quite confident without being too ballsy about it, and we had to sort of keep cool. And everyone there's Star Wars fans, maybe not as big as Oliver and I are, but we're all Star Wars fans that are working on these films. So they've got a pretty good insight, and I'm excited almost as Oliver and I are to be working on Star Wars, especially for The Force Awakens. Then as time moved on, once I moved away from R2, I'm now in a bit of an unknown territory where I'm having to build stuff just from a drawing. And a drawing, I just mean a sketch, not a CAD drawing. So now I haven't got the gift of having plans or being able to buy parts in and things like that. It suddenly became out of my comfort zone. So I then went on quite a quick learning curve. This was during The Force Awakens, because Oliver and I made some droids that were new to us. Oliver worked on the Sentry droid, the white one. That was the main thing he did. I had to replicate the Mouse droids. So that was a little bit easier. But again, I had to make a former myself and learn how to make shapes and vac form and so on. So I learned that quite quickly. But then we had some drawings of stuff to replicate where they draw a human against the image of the droid. So we get the scale, and then the rest is down to us to build it. And luckily, the stuff I built turned out okay. And then as I've gone from one film to another, thankfully to everybody around me, we all help each other out. So if there's anything I wasn't sure about, they soon set you on the right path. hopefully, if you're skilled enough, you can get on and do it. You know, I can use the mill, I can use a lathe, you know, I know how to use lots of machinery around the workshop. So I can just grasp it, I can do it. Some things I feel a little bit out of my depth, but having spoken to people in the workshop, we all sometimes think that, oh my God, how are we going to achieve this? You know, most things are new, or, you know, Neil as a boss, he always wants bigger and better from you each time. So we have that pressure as well. And yeah, as time's gone on, you're working with the same crew. So we're a very close-knit bunch of people. We all help each other out. And yeah, the longer I've been there, certainly the more I've learned. And yeah, the more I've built from scratch. So it's been quite a nice journey.
I should imagine it's quite satisfying to see a creation come to life that started off as you say, a sketch on the back of a proverbial fag packet.
Absolutely, yeah. My favourite build has to be the track droid, the ALT droids. You know, I love them. We've got the miniature versions we do now, and there's an ALT Builders Club, which people seem to be latching on to at last, because they go back to Rogue One. Not that I've seen much in Rogue One, but then Solo, of course, and Mandalorian they've been seen. So that was probably my biggest achievement, because that was just from a sketch. And Tim Berry, who does go along to R2 Builder events, I know most of the R2 builders know Tim now, because he's become a very good friend of mine that I work with regularly at Pinewood. And he did an amazing drive system for it. We got the tank track drive system, which we've, you know, implemented in various other builds. We use the same motors for R2D2. And yeah, it is a huge sense of achievement. Very rarely on your own. You know, you've got a good team around you. We muck in, help each other out, and usually a very good result at the end.
Brilliant stuff. So with obviously this last 12 months or so, COVID having a massive impact on just about every industry going, how's that affected your work and the work of the rest of the department?
It's been tricky. So we had a long break between Rise of Skywalker and the production I'm on now. We had quite a long break anyway, so there's not much Star Wars going on. A lot of people went and worked on Jurassic. I didn't. I've always said I'd only like to work on Star Wars, and it's pretty much stayed that way, because I'm a bit specialised in droids and so on. You know, that's my thing. I'm not into mechanics, doing animatronic heads and what have you. So I'm a bit of a one-trick pony, if you like. But when Star Wars started back up, the production we're on now, it was literally just before COVID kicked in. So I was there from day one, setting up the workshop, getting all the machinery in, setting up our space, setting up the workbenches. I think I was about 3 weeks in, ready for the crew to come in and start all the builds and start all the work. And then we were put on furlough. So that was really tricky, because people would come into the end of Jurassic. They knew they were coming into work on a new production. Then suddenly all that work seemed to go away. Luckily, Lucasfilm being Lucasfilm, you know, we knew Star Wars was always going to be a thing. It was going to come back. So we started back in August last year. We were lucky enough to start back then. We are being tested. We were at the time being tested once a week. I'm now up to being tested 3 times a week. Face masks are being worn all the time. Wherever you are, you always wear a face mask. The only time you drop your face mask is if you're taking a drink or eating your lunch. We still have to distance ourselves. So even working together is very difficult if you're doing a build. You know, it's very tricky, but you have to be, you know, aware of your surroundings. And then on set, we've got the additional safety of not just the face masks, we wear a face shield as well. So we've got a double barrier. And Lucasfilm's effort to make our well-being as you know, as good as possible for COVID is second to none. You know, it's the food, for example, there's no sitting in a big canteen anymore. Every table's got a screen in between it, so you can't sit and have a chat with someone over lunch. All the lunches are now served in bags, so you can take in paper bags, recyclable bags, so you can take them away and sit in a workshop out the way. So it's a bit of it's not as social as it used to be, but equally it allows us to continue with the production. And I must confess, you know, we're on a film set. There are a lot of people on a film set, of course, and I sometimes wonder what I'm doing there. You know, when the pubs aren't allowed to open, the restaurants aren't allowed to open, I pass a sign when I go to work: stay at home, save lives. And I'm thinking, I'm just about to go on a film set. But if people could see the safety measures they're taking and, you know, the precautions they're taking, you'd understand how we are managing to function as a production in a safe way and not, thankfully, touch wood, not spread COVID. And I'm also aware of that when I'm at home at weekends. You know, I don't go to the shops. You know, I just stay at home, and I don't want to expose myself and jeopardize my job and everybody else that I work with. So they're very mindful of it, and so far so good.
Do you find that working in the film industry has changed your life?
Definitely, 100%. Wow, in so many ways. The travel has been phenomenal. I've been very lucky to travel to a lot of places doing promotional work and so on for the films all around the world. I've made some very good friends in the industry, really close friends. I used to work at home on my own with very little company. You'll know about this, Steve. I know you work from home. It gets a bit soul destroying at times when the radio is your friend. You know, your friends are the DJs you listen to every day. So yeah, the social aspect is wonderful, and like I say, Tim is a very good friend amongst many others. And the recognition, you know, the pat on the back you get. You know, when I used to do office work, you didn't get a pat on the back once or twice a week for the great job you're doing and the great filing you're doing, or whatever it may be, even though you probably should be, because you're probably doing a damn good job. But whereas the film industry, you know, you get to make this thing, do this job that you love. You get credit from your bosses and the crew around you and so on, saying how pleased they are. Or if they're not, you get constructive criticism and you put it right. And then, you know, you get the credit where it's due. And then people get to see your work in a film or TV series, you know, and also people replicate your work. The ALT droid, like I say, you know, it's not my design, but I built the first version of it, and now other people are making it. You've seen it at events. It's amazing.
I think you're also being a little bit modest there as well, Lee, because people may not recognise or know what the ALT droid is. So I'll pop a photo of an ALT up now whilst we're talking. But perhaps what people won't realise is it's actually called an ALT because that's part of your initials. So you actually named that droid. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm lucky enough as well to name all the droids. I try to name every droid. So when we make a droid, it goes into photography and scanning for the encyclopedia and the tops cards and so on. And that's the first opportunity you get to tell the photographer what the name of the droid is. So usually they've all got code names, which are given from conception. So we usually give over the code names. I give over the code names, which I decide to call it whatever. And I name a lot of droids after members of the crew and what have you. And suddenly they'll look at the encyclopedia and there's their name against the droid, which is always good fun. And yeah, Pablo, who writes the encyclopedia, he contacted me one day and said, Lee, these track droids, I'm seeing a number of these track droids pop up. Are they an astromech? And I'm, no, not really. They're an all-terrain droid. And he says, so what can we call them? Well, I want to give these sort of this demographic, give them a title. So I said, well, how about a LT droid? So LT being Lee Towersey. And he's like, yeah, that's good because you've called it an all-terrain droid as well. So the ALT could stand for all-terrain, but it is also a L Towersey droid. So yeah, another fortuitous opportunity to have, definitely.
And am I right in thinking you also snuck in a little, shall we say, Easter egg on one of the Mouse Droids, where the pattern on the side of the Mouse Droid, you actually managed to craft your initials into it. Is that right?
Yes. We would say they're my initials, but actually, I did both sides. I did my son's initials. So my son also has the initials LT because he's Luke. And on the other side is JT, which is Joel. So it has been seen. It became a little gift in a cereal packet, which replicates the initials on the side of the droids. It's so obvious. If people see it now, if they haven't already, it is so obvious. And I did see actually on The Mandalorian, the season 1 making of, there's a Mouse Droid in that. which Michael McMaster built, I believe, but they blew it up. So they blew up a CG version. And in the making of Mandalorian, they show you how they did the CG version. And the CG version turns out to be the scan of the mouse droid that I made with my son's initials on. So you see it rotating on the CAD, on the CG, and you can see the JT and the LT on both sides of the droid. So it's quite an interesting other little Easter egg as well. Yeah.
If you weren't working on the Star Wars franchise and you had free reign, if the phone rang tomorrow and it was a director or an agent and they said, Lee, we really want you to come and work on this film, what franchise would that be?
Well, it's a droid related answer, I'm afraid, because if there's any build I would like to do which I haven't done, there's got to be Johnny 5. So if he was to come back, I know there's someone else looking after that. Certainly Dave in Wales would probably rather have the job than me. But yeah, I'd love to do anything with Johnny 5. That would be probably the dream job if that came back, which I think it should.
If you weren't sort of building droids, what would be perhaps your next sort of dream job?
Wow. What, as in a film? Another?
Yeah, yes. Film or TV or stage?
Wow, how narrow-minded am I when I can only think of Star Wars and droids? I don't know. I'm not sure. I suppose a Terminator film. How's that? Oh yeah, I'd love to work on a Terminator film. That'd be cool. Yep. Working on special effects, something like that.
Okay, that's a fair answer. That's an absolutely fair answer. Well, listen, Lee, I've taken up an awful lot of your time and you've been extremely generous with your time for us today. So I can't thank you enough for that. And of course, I'd like to extend an invite to you and of course all the other R2 builders and in fact any prop type builders over to Jersey whenever we're allowed to open up and whenever our next actual event is. And I know you can't wait to get out and attend some more Comic-Cons over in the UK as well. So Lee Towersey, for now, thank you very much for your time and may the force be with you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much for having me and everybody enjoy the rest of the day. I hope you enjoyed the show.